My name is Elena. I'm 32 years old, and I've learned that in my family, announcements are never invitations. They're conclusions. Breakfast was already half over when my dad cleared his throat, that careful sound he makes when he wants silence without asking for it. The clink of his fork against the plate landed like a gavel. "We've booked a trip to Italy," he said. He said it the way people say they've changed internet providers. Informational. Final. He didn't look up. He watched the steam rise from his coffee like it might answer back. "Just the 6 of us," he added. Then, softer, almost polite, "You understand, right?" That sentence had followed me my whole life. It always arrived right after something had already been decided. My mom smiled immediately, the practiced smile she uses when things are going according to plan. My brother Marco raised his eyebrows, impressed. My younger sister Lila clapped once, quick and contained, like she'd rehearsed it. Her fiancé leaned back in his chair and laughed. The sound had no edges. He already knew. I looked down at my plate. Scrambled eggs. Toast gone cold. A coffee I hadn't touched. The familiar inventory of things I didn't need but would be expected to accept. "Of course," I said. My voice came out even. Pleasant. The voice you use with customer service reps and security lines. The kind of voice that reassures other people that they are good. No one thanked me for understanding. They never do. Gratitude would imply they'd asked. They moved on immediately, like I'd pressed play on a recording. Flights. Layovers. Hotels with balconies. My mom mentioned light linen outfits. My dad talked about luggage limits. Marco pulled out his phone to check football schedules abroad. Lila said Florence would look amazing at golden hour. No one asked if I'd ever wanted to see Italy. No one asked about my work schedule, or whether I was free, or if maybe, just maybe, I'd assumed I was included. They didn't need to ask. They had already placed me where I always go, outside the frame, holding the camera. When my family plans things, I become quiet. Not hurt quiet, observant quiet. I listen to the gears turning behind the walls. I hear what's being said without words. Italy wasn't the point. Italy was just the setting. After breakfast, I rinsed my plate and placed it in the dishwasher even though it wasn't full. My mom hates clutter more than she hates discomfort. As I dried my hands, she touched my arm lightly, like a courtesy tap. "Next time," she said, "we'll do something all together." Next time is my family's favorite tense. It never requires action. I smiled back. I always do. Smiles are cheaper than arguments. The drive home felt longer than it was. I turned the radio off halfway through because the noise felt intrusive. At a red light, I noticed my hands were clenched around the steering wheel, knuckles pale. I forced them to relax. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself I was used to it. Being used to something doesn't mean it stops leaving marks. I unlocked my apartment and stood just inside the door for a moment, shoes still on. The quiet inside my place always feels earned, like I've stepped into neutral air after holding my breath somewhere else. I dropped my keys into the bowl by the door and exhaled. At 9:47 p.m., my phone buzzed. Bank alert. The first charge loaded slowly, like it was considering whether to show itself. $1,134, international airline booking. Then another. $687, boutique hotel, Rome. Then another. Venice rail upgrade. Florence food tour. Museum passes. I sat down on the couch as the list kept growing, neat and merciless. By the time it stopped, the total hovered just over $8,900. I didn't gasp. I didn't swear. I didn't feel shocked. I felt tired, because this was the part they never announced at breakfast. My name had always been the quiet line item, the shared resource, the backup plan that didn't require consent. I stared at the screen until it dimmed. Not because I didn't know what to do, but because I did, and realizing that felt heavier than confusion ever had. It would have been easy to call, to follow the old choreography. "Hey, I think there's been a mistake." "Oh, honey, we thought it was fine." "You're so responsible." "We'll figure it out." The dance where I pay first and process later. Instead, I opened the app. I slid the card lock from green to gray. The color change was almost anticlimactic. No alarms. No warnings. Just silence. I tapped dispute on each charge, one by one. The app asked for confirmation in neutral language, like it didn't care about the history behind the numbers. 5 minutes later, it was done. I made tea. Chamomile. The kind that smells like forgiveness I hadn't agreed to give yet. I sat on the couch and let the quiet settle around me, touching places that had been sore for years without me naming them. A text came in from my partner, Jonah. "You okay?" "Yeah, I typed. Family stuff. Want company?" "Not yet," I replied. "But, thank you." He sent a heart. Nothing else. Jonah understands doors. He doesn't try to walk through them for me. At 5:12 a.m., my phone buzzed again. A message from my mom, sent from the airport. "Elena, something's wrong with our tickets. Call me." I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I typed back, slowly. "I'm not on the trip." That was all. I set the phone face down and watched the kettle begin to steam again, just to hear something honest. Italy hadn't been the beginning. It never is. I used to think moments like the Italy trip came out of nowhere. Sudden, sharp, impossible to prepare for. But sitting in my kitchen that morning, watching steam curl up from the kettle like a question mark, I understood something I'd been avoiding for years. This wasn't new. It just had a better backdrop. Italy felt dramatic because it had a name. A place people dream about, but the mechanism behind it was ordinary, domestic, well-worn. It lived in the small spaces where decisions happen without witnesses. Growing up, I was the reliable one. The child who didn't need reminders. The teenager who didn't slam doors. The adult who had it together. In my family, competence was treated like consent. When I got my first real job, my dad joked that I was the safety net now. Everyone laughed. I laughed too, because I didn't yet know that jokes can be contracts if you don't refuse them out loud. The first time my card paid for something I didn't agree to, it was small. Groceries. My mom called afterward, flustered but casual. "Oh, I forgot my wallet. I hope that was okay." I said yes before she finished the sentence. I always said yes before the sentence ended. That's how you train people without realizing it. Later came bigger things. Utility bills when my parents were between plans. A security deposit for Marco when he moved apartments. Lila's bridal shower venue when the original one fell through. Every time, there was a reason. Every reason sounded temporary. Temporary things have a way of becoming permanent when no one objects. What hurt wasn't the money. It was the erasure. The way my presence became optional once my usefulness was assumed. I remembered Christmas 2 years ago. Snow coming down sideways. 6-hour drive after work. I'd brought gifts wrapped so carefully the paper edges aligned like architecture. When I arrived, there was an unfamiliar car in the driveway. Inside, coats were piled high. Extra voices. Extra laughter. "Oh," my mom said when she saw me. "I forgot to tell you. Your uncle brought a friend. He's alone this year." She glanced toward the table. Every chair was filled. "You understand, right?" That phrase again. Soft. Polite. Non-negotiable. They set a place for me at the kitchen counter. Not because there was nowhere else, but because it was easier than asking someone else to move. I ate standing up, listening to stories I wasn't part of. When dessert came out, no one noticed I'd already put my coat back on. That night, I cried in my car with the engine running, so the house wouldn't hear me leave. I didn't say anything the next day. I never did. Silence had become my coping strategy, and their camouflage. Then there was the anniversary dinner. My parents' 40th. A restaurant with low lighting and expensive chairs. I hadn't been invited to plan, but I'd been added to the payment without a conversation. When I asked about it, my dad said, "It's easier if it all goes on one card." Easier for who? I wondered, already knowing the answer. At the table, my mom raised a glass. To family, the people who always show up. Everyone turned toward me, smiling, toasting, applauding my presence as if it were voluntary. I excused myself to the restroom and stood under fluorescent lights until my hands stopped shaking. Then I walked to the host stand, showed them the charge on my phone, and quietly asked to remove it. I left before dessert. No scene. No goodbye. They noticed 3 days later when the statement posted. After Italy, after the charges, after my message from the airport, the past started rearranging itself in my mind like evidence finally allowed to sit together. I wasn't unlucky. I was positioned. By noon that day, my family chat was alive. "Mom, the airline says there's a problem." Marco, "Elena, what did you do?" Lila, "This isn't funny." I didn't respond. For the first time, I let silence do the work. My phone rang. Dad. I let it go to voicemail. Elena, he said, controlled but sharp. You're overreacting. This was a misunderstanding. Call me. Misunderstanding implies two sides misheard something. This wasn't that. This was habit colliding with resistance. I opened a notebook and wrote a list, slow and deliberate. Things tied to my name. Phone plans, shared subscriptions, account access, payment authorizations, the family cloud storage I'd set up years ago, the security system at my parents' house that I paid for because I knew tech. I stopped halfway through the page and stared at what I'd written. I wasn't just involved. I was embedded. That realization didn't make me angry. It made me clear. I texted Jonah. I think I'm untangling something big. He replied a minute later. Do you want help or space? Space, I wrote. But stay close. He sent back. I'm here. In the afternoon, my mom texted again. We're at the gate. Please fix this. Fix. That word carried so much expectation it almost impressed me. I set my phone down and went for a walk instead. The air was cool, the sky indecisive. As I walked, I felt something unfamiliar. Not guilt, not fear, but alignment. Like a joint settling into place after years of strain. By the time I got home, I knew this wasn't about Italy anymore. It was about architecture. And I was done being the foundation without being named in the blueprint. Clarity doesn't arrive like lightning. It's quieter than that. It feels more like a room, finally bright enough that you can see what's been there all along. That afternoon, I didn't rage clean or cry or rehearse speeches in the mirror. I opened my laptop and logged into the systems I had once built out of goodwill. The accounts, the dashboards, the places where my name had been doing unpaid labor for years. The first thing I noticed was how familiar everything felt. I knew where every setting lived, every password reset option, every billing tab. That should have felt empowering. Instead, it felt like evidence. I started with the phone plan. 5 lines. Mine, my parents', Marco's, Lila's. I'd added them years ago when it was simpler to bundle. When my dad joked that I had the responsible one discount. I remembered standing in that store, signing the contract, believing it was temporary. Temporary things again. I didn't cancel the plan outright. That would have been explosive, obvious, easy to dismiss as spite. Instead, I transferred ownership of each line back to its user. The system warned me they'd need to update payment details within 72 hours to avoid interruption. 72 hours felt generous. I hit confirm. No drama. No sirens. Just a confirmation email sliding into my inbox. Next was the password vault. At some point, my helpfulness had crossed into custodianship. Banking logins. Streaming accounts. Utility portals. Lila's freelance site backend. My parents' tax software. I had become the keeper of keys because I didn't mind. I minded now. I reset the master access and removed every shared device. The app paused and asked if I was sure. It explained in polite language that this would revoke all linked sessions. Yes, I whispered like it mattered. The screen blinked. Done. Within minutes, my phone lit up. Mom, Netflix logged us out. Dad, can't access the mortgage account. Lila, did you change something? I didn't answer. Not yet. I made myself lunch and ate it slowly at the table, something I rarely do on weekdays. It felt ceremonial, like I was marking time. Then I opened the smart home dashboard. 2 years earlier, I'd upgraded my parents' place after my dad complained about break-ins in the neighborhood. I'd paid for the system, installed the cameras, set up the locks. It had seemed like care. Now it looked like control routed through my credit. I didn't disable anything dramatically. I simply removed my payment method and ended the licenses. The system defaulted to manual mode. The cameras went dark. The thermostat disconnected. Correction, not punishment. By late afternoon, the calls started. Marco first. What's going on? I let it ring. Then Lila. Text this time. You're being dramatic. This is embarrassing. Mom's upset. I archived the thread. My dad left a voicemail, his voice tight with authority he expected to still work. Elena, enough. Fix this. You're part of this family whether you like it or not. Whether you like it. I listened once. I didn't listen again. I opened a spreadsheet and titled it Personal Entanglements. Row by row, I began listing everything I could remember. Dates, amounts, accounts, notes, no adjectives, no commentary, just facts. When I reached the Italy charges, I paused. That moment at breakfast replayed itself in my mind. His fork, the eggs, the sentence that wasn't a question. You understand, right? I typed the words into the notes column, then deleted them. Facts only. By evening, the spreadsheet was longer than I expected. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt exposed, like I'd finally admitted something private out loud to myself. Jonah came over with groceries I hadn't asked for. He set them on the counter without comment and kissed my cheek. You okay? He asked. I think so, I said. I think I'm doing something I should have done years ago. He nodded. No advice. No urgency. He leaned against the counter and let me talk when I wanted to. That night, my mom texted again. We're stuck in the airport. This is cruel. Cruel. I looked around my apartment. Clean. Quiet. Paid for by me. No one else's expectations humming through the walls. I'm not on the trip. I typed again, not because she needed to hear it, but because I needed to see it written twice. The typing dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Nothing came. I slept deeply for the first time in weeks. The next morning, the 72 hours were ticking. Notifications rolled in. Service warnings. Missed payments. Panic masquerading as confusion. By noon, Marco's line went inactive. By evening, my parents. Lila's held on until the next day. She texted once more. You're really going to do this? I replied with my first message since the breakfast. I already did. That night, I added a new page to the notebook. 7 doors. I didn't know yet what all of them were. But I knew this. Understanding had been my role for decades. Now, it was time to learn something else. Silence changes shape once other people start narrating it for you. By the third day, my name had become a problem that needed explaining. I could feel it even without opening the family chat, the pressure of it, like air shifting before a storm. When people lose access, they don't ask why. They ask who to blame. The first message didn't come from my parents. It came from my aunt. Your mom says you're going through something. Do you want to talk? That sentence was familiar. Concern dressed up as containment. The implication wasn't that something had happened to me, but that I had become something that needed managing. I didn't reply. By noon, a cousin texted. Then another. Each message softer than the last, like they were testing how fragile I'd become. Everyone's worried. This isn't like you. They're saying you cut them off. Cut them off. As if the cords hadn't always been plugged into me. I muted every thread and went back to the spreadsheet. Facts were steadier than feelings. Receipts didn't tremble. Dates didn't reinterpret themselves. Around 2, my dad finally texted instead of calling. You're making us look bad. There it was. The real injury. Not the money. Not the trip. Not the loss of contact. Image. I stared at the message until the screen dimmed, then added a new column to the spreadsheet. Narratives. I didn't fill it yet. I just let it sit there, waiting. That evening, Jonah found me at the table surrounded by printouts. He leaned over my shoulder. You building a case? He asked gently. No, I said. I'm closing one. He nodded, understanding the difference immediately. Later that night, my mom posted on social media. I didn't see it firsthand. A friend sent me a screenshot with a single line of text. I'm so sorry. Are you okay? The post was brief, vague, perfect. Some people forget who raised them. Heartbroken but choosing peace. Dozens of comments followed. Hearts, prayers, words like toxic and ungrateful floating freely, unattached to facts. I felt something in my chest tighten, not anger but recognition. This was how they'd always handled conflict. If they couldn't control the outcome, they controlled the story. I didn't comment. I didn't defend myself. I didn't post a counterpoint. Instead, I created a new folder on my desktop. Ledger. Inside it, I began saving copies. Italy charges. Dispute confirmations. Old statements. Screenshots of messages where you understand, right? Appeared like a refrain. I wasn't building ammunition. I was building memory. The next day, the messages sharpened. Dad, you're tearing this family apart. Mom, I don't recognize you anymore. Lila, everyone thinks you're unstable. Unstable. That word landed differently than the others. Not because it hurt more, but because it was strategic. It explained everything without explaining anything. It made receipts irrelevant. Jonah read the messages over my shoulder. They're trying to discredit you, he said calmly. I know. Do you want to respond? I thought about it. About how easy it would be to correct the record. To post numbers, dates, screenshots, to let the truth scorch everything. Not yet, I said. There's a moment in every power shift where restraint does more damage than action. That afternoon, my parents showed up at my building. The intercom buzzed once, then again. I didn't answer. I watched through the window as they stood on the sidewalk, close enough to look unified, far enough apart to show strain. When they left, my phone buzzed with a voicemail from my dad. We just want to talk. Talk had never been the issue. That night I slept poorly. Not from doubt, but from adrenaline. When you stop absorbing impact, your body doesn't know what to do with the stored energy. In the morning, I opened the ledger again and began organizing it like something that might one day be seen. Clear file names, clean folders, no commentary. Truth doesn't need adjectives. By noon, the group chat exploded. Marco, why is the Wi-Fi down? Mom, this is cruel, Elena. Dad, fix it. Now. I archived the thread. An hour later, Lila messaged Jonah directly. You know she's not well, right? After everything. He showed me the phone. Want me to reply? He asked. No, I said. Let them hear themselves. By evening, the silence had done its work. A cousin messaged privately. I saw the charges. I didn't know. Another followed. They're panicking. I didn't feel victorious. I felt steady. That's when I understood something important. They didn't miss me. They missed the infrastructure. And infrastructure only matters once it's gone. I closed the laptop and stood by the window as the city lights came on. For the first time, the quiet didn't feel like absence. It felt like space. They came on a Thursday evening, just after sunset, when the city light turned soft enough to feel forgiving. I knew it was them before I looked through the peephole. Families have a way of arriving with the weight of expectation still clinging to them. My parents stood close together. Lila a half step behind, arms crossed, already braced. They looked rehearsed, like they'd agreed on tone but not outcome. Jonah was on the couch, book open but unread. He glanced up. Do you want me here? He asked. Yes, I said, but I'll handle it. I opened the door without smiling and without stepping aside. The threshold stayed exactly where it was. My mom spoke first. She always does when something needs to sound gentle. We didn't come to fight, she said, eyes already glassy. We came to make things right. Right. The word hung there, undefined. Lila exhaled loudly. This has gone too far, Elena. My dad's jaw was tight. He nodded once, like a judge confirming a ruling that hadn't been issued yet. I didn't invite them in. What do you want? I asked. They blinked. Not at the question, but at the tone. Calm unsettles people who expect drama. My mom reached for my arm. I stepped back. We don't understand why you're doing this, she said. You've always been so generous. Generous. The compliment that had cost me years. I didn't stop being generous, I said. I stopped being available without consent. Dad stepped forward. We took care of you. We've always been there. The script. Familiar. Reliable. You took care of me when I was a child, I said. That wasn't a favor. That was your job. Silence pressed in. Lila laughed once, sharp and incredulous. Wow. So now you're rewriting history. No, I said. I'm documenting it. That word changed the air. My mom's voice trembled. We didn't know how much you were helping. If you just told us. I did, I said. In 100 small ways you didn't hear because understanding was easier for you than listening. Dad shook his head. This isn't how family works. I met his eyes. This is exactly how our family worked. I'm just not participating anymore. They looked at me like I'd said something unthinkable. What are we supposed to do now? My mom asked, tears slipping free. It was the most honest question she'd asked all week. Figure it out, I said. The way you expected me to. Lila stepped forward, voice lower now. You didn't have to humiliate us. I didn't, I said. I stopped covering. There's a difference. My dad's voice hardened. So that's it? You're cutting us off. I considered the question carefully. I'm stepping back, I said, from being the solution to problems I didn't create. They stood there, stunned. Not by anger, but by finality. Mom tried once more. We're family. I nodded. And this is what I'm choosing to teach myself about family. For a moment, no one spoke. Then my dad straightened, dignity settling into place like armor. If you walk away from this, he said, don't expect things to go back. I'm not walking away, I said. I'm standing still. You're the ones who have to decide what to do without me. That was the verdict. No slam. No raised voices. Just clarity. My mom reached out again, stopped herself, then nodded slowly, like she was memorizing my face for later arguments. They left without another word. I closed the door gently. The click of the lock felt less like separation and more like punctuation. Jonah didn't say anything right away. He just stood and wrapped his arms around me. That was brave, he said quietly. It was necessary, I replied. Later that night, my phone buzzed with a single message from my dad. You're no longer part of this family. I read it once. Then I took a screenshot and saved it to the ledger under a new folder. Final statements. Not out of spite, out of accuracy. I turned off my phone and went to bed. For the first time, I slept without rehearsing what I owed anyone in the morning. People assume that cutting ties comes with fireworks, crying fits, regret, long nights of second-guessing. That wasn't what followed. What followed was space. The first week after they left was almost too quiet. I'd reach for my phone without realizing it, expecting some small emergency. A password request. A billing question. A can you just wrapped in urgency. My nervous system had been trained to respond before I thought. Now there was nothing. Silence, when you're not used to it, can feel like abandonment even when it's freedom. Jonah noticed before I did. You keep waiting for something, he said one morning as I stood by the window, coffee cooling in my hand. I know, I said. I don't know what to do with the extra room. You'll figure it out, he replied. You always do. I started small. Mornings without my phone. Walks without podcasts. Meals eaten sitting down instead of over the sink. I learned how much of my life had been lived in response mode, always anticipating the next need that wasn't mine. One afternoon, I opened the ledger again. Not to add, not to organize, just to look. The files sat there quietly, factual and unarguable. They didn't hurt the way they once had. They felt finished. I renamed the folder. What love isn't. That felt right. A few days later, Lila emailed me. No greeting. No apology. I started therapy. I didn't see it before. I do now. I read it twice. Not because I doubted the words, but because I no longer felt responsible for what came after them. I didn't reply. Forgiveness doesn't always need a conversation. Sometimes it's just not reopening a door you finally closed. Spring came early that year. The kind of spring that smells like rain and clean pavement. I started running again, slow at first, then steadier. With each step, I felt something loosen inside me, like a knot finally trusting it didn't need to hold. One evening, Jonah and I sat on the balcony, city lights blinking on below us. So, he said, leaning back. What now? I watched the skyline for a moment. Sharp, open, unapologetic. Now, I said, I build things that don't require my disappearance to exist. He smiled. That sounds like you. No, I said softly. It sounds like the me I didn't get to be before. I didn't block my family. I didn't announce no contact. I didn't need to. Silence, when it's chosen, teaches faster than speeches ever could. Every now and then, a distant relative sends a request. A neutral message. Testing the temperature. I let them sit unread. The truth doesn't need an audience anymore. It just needs peace. At breakfast one morning, alone, quiet, intentional, I made eggs and toast and poured coffee into my favorite mug. I ate slowly at my own table, with no announcements waiting to be understood. For the first time, the day belonged to me before anyone else could claim it. And that, I realized, was the real trip I'd been missing all along.